Yes, in this video, our focus is going to be on what we call the overview of the content structure. We want to look at the content structure and we want to be able to then use it. Okay. Now, the first thing we're going to do is to go through the units, just list them down, see how many units we have, and then how many topics we have, and then we start breaking them down even further. So, first thing to know is that we have only units rather, only 4 units in our IGCSE maths. So the units are going to be one is going to be number, okay? Then unit 2 is going to be algebra and graphs, okay? Algebra and graphs. Unit 3, let me put it, algebra and graphs. Then unit 3 is going to be shape and space. Okay, this is going to be our unit 3. Then unit 4 is going to be probability and statistics. Okay, probability and statistics. Lack of space, that's why I've written it in short. So probability and statistics, shape and space, algebra and graphs, then numbers. These are the 4 units. Unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, and unit 4. Whatever you put as unit 1, doesn't matter. So here are our 4 units. Now we have 9 topics in these 4 units. 9 topics. And these topics are, in number, the topic is number. In algebra and graphs, the first, or let's say this is just algebra. That's the unit 2. We'll say the unit is called algebra. Then it has a topic called, algebra and graphs. And then it has another topic called coordinate geometry. Okay? Coordinate geometry. Now, when we go to shape and space, we have 4 topics rather, in this unit. It's the 3rd unit and it has 4 topics. First topic is going to be called geometry, not coordinate geometry, but just geometry. Okay? It's going to be called geometry. Second, we'll call it trigonometry. Okay? Trigonometry. And then the third one is mensuration. Okay? Please, this is different from the bio one. This is mensuration. Okay? And then the last one is going to be vectors and transformations. These are the 4 topics, vectors and transformations. These are the 4 topics in this unit number 3. Then when we go to the 4th unit, we'll then have probability as a topic. Then the last topic would be statistics. This is what we have. Here are the 9 topics. So topic 1, topic 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 9 topics in 4 units. Now, when we look at these units, big question would be, what is their overall percentage contribution in an exam? Who is the biggest? Who gives me the most marks? So for us, extended students, those who are doing extended, that's what we have. These are going to give you, here let's put the order. I'm going to put numbers, and these numbers on these units tell you the size. We are ordering them in size. Who has the biggest percentage contribution to your final exam mark? The biggest is going to be algebra. He's going to be the biggest, and algebra is going to be 35 to 40% of your final grade. This is going to be algebra alone. Then the second biggest is going to be shape and space, which is going to be 30 to 35% of your final grade. Then the third biggest is going to be number, which is going to be, this is the third biggest, is going to be 15 to 20% of your final grade. Then the smallest one is going to be algebra, is the 4th, probability and statistics, which is going to be 10 to 15%. So just look at algebra. 35 to 40 is algebra. 30 to 35 is shape and space. 15 to 20 is number. Then 10 to 15 will be probability and statistics. Great. So you can see that algebra has the most percentage contribution, has the biggest percentage contribution to your final exam. 35 to 40% of your final mark will be algebra. So if we remove algebra, you have gotten something like 65, between 60 and 65%. Okay, between 60 and 65, that's a C. Just by removing algebra, you already have a C. Okay, same as well if we remove shape and space. If we remove shape and space, you would have 65 to 70% without it. So either way, that's the best you can get. You can't get anything better than that. You've lost 30%, at least 30%. For algebra, you've lost at least 35%. These two are so important. Shape and space, you lose at least 30. Algebra, at least 35. Number, at least 15% is gone. Then probability and statistics is at least 10%. So either way, these are all very important because we don't want to lose a single percentage. We don't want to lose. Now you say to me, what are the things that come in this topic 1 number? When you look at the topic number, the things that you may get in there are quite a lot. First of all, let me say this before I start talking to you about it. Let me say, when you write your papers, you are going to write 2 papers, okay? You're going to write paper 2, and then you are going to write paper 4. So you are only going to write these 2 papers, paper 2 and paper 4. And these are the ones that will be carrying all this percent. In paper 2, this is going to be a 1 hour, 30-minute exam. So it's going to be 1 hour, 30 minutes. And it's going to give you 35% of your final mark. This paper is going to be 35% of your final mark. And it's going to be 1 hour and 30 minutes. Paper 4 now is going to be 2 hours and 30 minutes. And it's going to be 65% of your final mark is going to be in paper 4. Okay, so you can see this. This one will have 70 marks. Okay, and this one will have 130 marks. So in total, you'll be fighting for 200 marks. Okay, and this would be the percentage contribution that these 2 papers will have. Now, next thing that we're looking at is, what are the things that come in these topics? That's the next big question that I'm sure you have. What are the things that come in these topics? So let's just cover them vaguely. I'm not going to list them, I'm not going to write them, but I'll vaguely tell you. In here, in the topic number, the things that you look at things like types of numbers, where you talk about square numbers, cube numbers, prime numbers, integers, whole numbers, natural numbers, or reciprocals, all these things. And what you could be asked about is, say for example, please give us a number as a product of its prime factors. That's an example. Or you could be asked to say, find the highest common factor or find the lowest common multiple. These are from types of numbers. The other thing you can do in here is going to be sets and Venn diagrams. So you'll be doing sets, and you need to know the set notation, union, intersect, then all the complement of set A. A is an element of, A is not an element of, the number of elements in set A. All these things you have to be able to do them. And then you do indices as well, where you talk about the powers and you talk about the roots and you do the laws of indices. In here again, that is where you do fractions and percentages. When we talk about fractions, decimals, and percentages, I guess. When we talk about fractions and decimals, we're saying, for example, convert something that has a recurring decimal like 0.7 recurring, which means 0.77777. Sevens keep going, right? Okay. Convert this to a fraction. You need to be able to convert it to a fraction and convert even basic ones. So converting from a decimal to a fraction and fraction to a decimal, stuff like that. And as well, you'll be talking about percentages, where you talk about percentage increase, percentage decrease, reverse percentage. You'll be talking about standard form, how to convert a number to standard form. You'll be talking about bounds. You'll be talking about rounding and estimation. You talk about ratio and proportion. You talk about interest, simple interest and compound interest. And you talk about time. You talk about currency conversion. These things. So these are the things that come in this. There's quite a lot. Okay. Then in algebra and graphs, basically, when you see this that they call coordinate geometry, I'm going to give it a soft cancel. This is called linear algebra. Okay, I'm not saying the word coordinate geometry is wrong. Okay, but it's okay, it's correct. Linear algebra, when we talk about algebra now, we're talking about you having letters of the alphabet in maths. So you'll be having a variable represented by a letter of an alphabet. A variable means a number that we don't know yet. Could be any number. So when you see a letter of the alphabet, X, Y, T, K, L, M, these letters are representing some number. And when we deal with them the way we would have dealt with numbers, because they are numbers. They're just representing numbers. Now, when we do this algebra, we like to separate it by looking at the powers on your variable. The variable we'll be looking at and focusing on mostly is X. So we look at the power on X. X to the power of 1, or X to the power of 2, or X to the power of 3. It depends with the power on X. If X is a power of 2, that means it is something that is quadratic. If it has a power of 1, we say it is linear. So you look at the highest power on X, on all the things that have X. What is the highest power? If it's just an X, which means it is X to the power of 1, then we'll be saying it's linear. That's when we deal with it in here as linear algebra. And what we deal with when we look at things that have X to the power of 1, okay, being the highest power, when it's an equation, you deal with the linear algebra where we talk about midpoint, length of a line, gradient, y-intercept, formulating the equation of a line. All these things are to do with linear algebra. So those are the things that come in linear algebra. Then, in this that they now call algebra and graphs, it's still algebra. So coordinate geometry is part of algebra, but it is linear algebra. You are only looking at the highest power of X being 1. So that's where we say you talk about things like midpoint, length of a line, equation of a line, right? You talk about gradient, y-intercept, these things, right? And then in algebra and graphs, you are now looking at the rest of the things in algebra. Algebra, the reason why it's the biggest is for a reason. It has a lot of things. You deal with functions, you deal with completing the square, you deal with differentiation, you deal with sketching graphs of quadratic functions, graph of cubic functions. You deal with these graphs. And as well, in algebra and graphs, the other thing that you talk about as well, you talk about things like factorization, solving equations, right? Could be simultaneous where one is quadratic, one is linear. You talk about expanding things, right? You talk about subject of the formula. That's the first and most important part. That's the first and most important thing there. Okay, you talk about sequences as well. So all these things are now coming in algebra. Then when you go to geometry now, when you go to unit 3, okay, so that is part of algebra. I'm sure you understand. When you go to unit 3 now, you'll be now talking about, in geometry, you are now dealing with angles. So that is where you deal with circle geometry. And then that is where you deal with geometry of parallel lines. You talk about parallel lines as well, where on parallel lines, you have opposite angles, you have like alternate angles, you have corresponding angles. These are the angles on parallel lines. Then circle geometry, you are now talking about the 7 circle rules, and then you see how to apply each one of them. And so geometry will be now looking at angles basically. So we're talking about angles, and you do circle geometry and the geometry of parallel lines. And then you also now look at, when we are in these topic of geometry, when we're talking about angles, you also look at the basic geometry where we say, what is the angle on a straight line? What is the angle around a point, basically? Then you go to trig where you talk about triangles, blah, 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 etc., etc. You talk about sine rule, cosine rule, Pythagoras theorem, SOHCAHTOA, and as well, you talk about the graphs as well and how to solve trig equations. You're done with trig and bearing as well. You go to mensuration where you talk about area, if it's a plane shape, those 2D shapes. When you now look at 3D shapes, you're now talking about surface area, volume, these things, and you'll be done if you can be able to talk about those things. Perimeter as well, you can be asked when you're talking about these plane shapes. Plane shapes, you talk about area and perimeter. When you're now looking at 3D shapes, you're now talking about surface, the total surface area, and then you look at the volume. Those are the things you normally look at. And you'll be talking about things that are shapes are now being cut into halves, and then they shade a certain region. They say find the area of the shaded region or unshaded, but you'll be dealing with the same shapes that we have learnt about, but now they're just cutting them in halves or doing whatever they want to do with them, and we still use it. You still work with it. Now, in vectors and transformations, right, you deal with the vectors where you'll be able to find, vectors, I think it's much better when you see it, but basically it will be related to moving from one position to another, and then you'll be trying to find different things about it, even the length of the line or whatever it is that you have to get. Then when you talk about transformations, you are going to get 4 transformations where you either draw or describe, and then you will do either whatever: enlargement, rotation, reflection, translation, those 4, and then you talk about them. Then you go to probability, you finish it. Statistics, you are done. Okay, probability, the 2 keywords, you have to know them. You have to know how to apply them, and then you have to know 1 or 2 things. And these are the 9 topics. In statistics, you deal with the histogram, cumulative frequency curve, box and whisker plot, stem and leaf diagram, those things, and how to find the mean. How to find the mean and how to find the median. Okay, you need to know how to find mean of grouped and ungrouped data and how to find the median. So those are the things, and you are done. Okay, this is going to be your IGCSE mathematics, and this is going to be everything. So this is just a quick rundown to give you a grasp of things. I didn't write it as orderly as you'd have wanted probably, but this is the thing. I'll provide you with the list if you need that. But these are the topics, and I've talked about the things that you expect in each one of them. If you know this, then you have a chance. The next thing will be now attacking questions and after question. All right? Bye. See you in the course.